Welcome back to Lore to Action, where we dive deep into gaming's most thrilling adventures. Today, we venture into the dark, morally complex world of The Witcher to explore one of gaming's most intricate narratives of memory, identity, and the price of power. Over the next couple hours, we'll uncover the complete story of Geralt of Rivia's first video game adventure, from his mysterious awakening at Kaer Morhen to his final confrontation with destiny itself. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's embark on this epic journey through a tale that would define an entire trilogy of legendary games. Released in 2007 by CD Projekt Red, The Witcher was based on the beloved fantasy novels by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski. Using BioWare's Aurora engine, the game introduced players to a mature, morally grey world where heroes and villains weren't clearly defined, and every choice carried weight. The Enhanced Edition, released in 2008, would refine this vision with additional content and improvements that helped establish The Witcher as one of the most important RPGs of its generation. But what made The Witcher truly special wasn't just its technical achievements or its source material. It was the way it crafted a narrative that respected its players' intelligence, presenting them with choices where there was no clear good or evil, only shades of grey that reflected the complexity of real moral decision-making. The consequences of these choices often wouldn't become apparent until chapters later, creating a storytelling experience that felt truly meaningful and personal. The Witcher's Awakening. Our story begins not with triumph, but with mystery. In the fortress of Kaer Morhen, home to the School of the Wolf, fellow witches Vesemir, Eskel, and Lambert have discovered something extraordinary and troubling. Their brother-in-arms, Geralt of Rivia, the legendary White Wolf, has returned to them unconscious and suffering from complete amnesia. His white hair, the result of unique mutations that made him one of the most powerful witches ever created, remains unchanged. But the man himself has been stripped of everything that made him who he was. The fortress itself tells a story of decline. Once the proud training ground for witches, Kaer Morhen now houses only a handful of the monster hunting profession. The secrets of creating new witches have been lost to time, and those who remain are relics of a dying breed. Sorceress Triss Merigold has come to examine the mutagens and determine if there's any hope of rekindling the School of the Wolf. But her presence at the fortress would prove to be fortuitous in ways none could have anticipated. Triss and Geralt have a complicated history, though the amnesiac Witcher remembers none of it. She regards him with a mixture of affection and concern, knowing the man he once was, while watching him struggle to piece together fragments of his identity. Her auburn hair and penetrating gaze hint at depths of knowledge and experience that Geralt can sense but not recall. The other witches treat Geralt with the careful respect of brothers who understand that their companion has returned to them as both himself and a stranger. Vesemir, the oldest and most experienced of them all, watches over Geralt with paternal concern. Eskel, scarred but steady, offers quiet support. Lambert, the youngest and most cynical, masks his worry behind sharp humor and bitter observations about their dying profession. As Geralt slowly begins to recover, he demonstrates that while his memories are gone, his skills remain intact. The mutations that enhanced his strength, speed, and senses still course through his veins. His knowledge of alchemy, his mastery of sword combat, and his ability to cast simple spells called signs all remain as sharp as ever. It's as if his body remembers what his mind has forgotten, creating an unsettling disconnect between knowledge and experience. The witches explain to Geralt what he was: a monster hunter by profession, a mutant by nature, and a man caught between worlds by fate. Witches are created through a brutal process known as the trial of the grasses, where children are subjected to mutagenic experiments that kill most of them but grant the survivors superhuman abilities. Those who survive become living weapons against the creatures that stalk the night. But they're also outcasts, feared and despised by the very people they protect. But Geralt was special, even among witches. His white hair marked him as unique, the result of additional mutations that granted him abilities beyond those of his brothers. His reputation as the White Wolf preceded him across the northern kingdoms, and his adventures had become the stuff of legend. Now, all of that history existed only in the memories of others, while Geralt himself felt like an actor who had forgotten his lines in the middle of a play. The Salamandra strikes. The peaceful, if melancholy atmosphere of Kaer Morhen is shattered when the fortress comes under attack. The assault is swift and brutal, carried out by a well-organized force of bandits led by two mysterious figures: a sophisticated assassin known only as the Professor, and a powerful mage whose identity remains hidden behind magical disguises. These are no ordinary brigands seeking easy loot. They move with purpose and precision, their target clear from the beginning. The attackers call themselves Salamandra, named after the mythical fire lizard that can survive in flames. Members of this criminal organization bear tattoos of salamanders, usually on their heads, marking their allegiance to a cause that extends far beyond simple banditry. They've come to Kaer Morhen for one specific purpose: to steal the closely guarded secrets of Witcher mutations, the formulas and processes that have been protected by the School of the Wolf for centuries. During the attack, a young man named Leo, who had been training at the fortress but had not undergone the Witcher mutations, is killed by the Professor. Leo was an orphan of the Second Nilfgaardian War, who had broken his fingers during training, preventing him from using signs. Yet his determination to master the Witcher's craft made him beloved by his mentors. His death at the hands of the invaders becomes deeply personal for Geralt, even though the Witcher cannot remember their relationship. The mysterious mage demonstrates power that even Triss Merigold cannot match, forcing the defenders to retreat while the Salamandra forces make off with their prize. The stolen mutagens represent knowledge accumulated over generations, the scientific and alchemical secrets that allowed witches to enhance their abilities and survive the trials that created them. In the wrong hands, these secrets could be used to create new kinds of mutants with none of the moral restraints or professional ethics that governed Witcher behavior. As the smoke clears and the dead are counted, Geralt finds himself driven by a purpose he doesn't fully understand. The attack has awakened something in him, a sense of duty and justice that transcends his missing memories. He may not remember who he was, but he knows who he must be: a Witcher with a job to finish. The other Witchers agree to spread out across the northern kingdoms, following different leads to track down the Salamandra organization. Geralt chooses to pursue his quarry toward the capital city of Vizima, beginning a journey that will take him far from the relative safety of Kaer Morhen and into a world of political intrigue, racial tensions, and moral complexity that will test every aspect of his character. Before leaving, Triss provides Geralt with what help she can, offering potions and advice about the world beyond the fortress walls. Her concern for him is evident, though she's careful not to overwhelm him with details about their past relationship. There will be time for such revelations later, if Geralt is ready for them. Journey to the outskirts. Geralt's path to Vizima takes him first through the troubled village known as the Outskirts, a collection of modest dwellings on the edge of civilized lands where life is harsh and death lurks in the shadows. The village exists in a state of perpetual fear, terrorized by mysterious creatures that emerge from the nearby swamp to hunt human prey under cover of darkness. Here, Geralt encounters his first taste of the complex moral landscape that defines the world of The Witcher. The villagers are simple folk, caught between forces beyond their control. They fear the monsters that stalk them, but they also fear the non-humans who live among them, the elves and dwarves who face increasing persecution in human-dominated kingdoms. The village is watched over by a reverend, a priest of the eternal fire, whose sermons promise salvation, but whose actions often contradict his holy words. He represents the kind of religious authority that uses fear and prejudice to maintain control, preaching about the dangers of monsters while stirring up hatred against anyone who's different. In the outskirts, Geralt also meets Abigail, a local healer whose knowledge of herbs and potions makes her invaluable to the villagers, but also suspect in their eyes. She lives apart from the community, practicing magic that the Reverend condemns as witchcraft. Her relationship with the villagers embodies the central tension of the Witcher's world, the simultaneous need for and fear of power that's not fully understood. It's here that Geralt first encounters Alvin, a young boy whose presence will prove far more significant than anyone initially realizes. The child has survived a Barghest attack that killed his foster mother, leaving him orphaned and traumatized. But the trauma has awakened something within Alvin, causing him to speak prophecies and display magical abilities that he cannot control. Alvin is what the world calls a source, a person born with innate magical powers that manifest without training or control. These abilities often prove as dangerous to the source as to those around them, creating unpredictable bursts of magical energy during times of stress or strong emotion. The boy's prophecies speak of ice and death, of a white frost that will consume the world, words that carry weight in a universe where prophecy and fate intertwine with mortal affairs. The villagers view Alvin with a mixture of awe and terror. His abilities mark him as touched by forces beyond their understanding, and in a world where difference often means danger, such marking can be a death sentence. The Reverend sees the boy as either a miracle or an abomination, depending on how his presence can be used to further the priest's own agenda. Geralt finds himself naturally protective of the boy, though he cannot explain why. Something about Alvin's situation resonates with the Witcher's own sense of displacement and loss. Both are caught between worlds, marked by powers they didn't choose, struggling to find their place in a society that views them with suspicion. The relationship between Geralt and Alvin becomes one of the most important elements of the entire story, though its true significance may not become clear until much later. For now, Geralt sees only a frightened child in need of protection, not realizing that he could be looking at a reflection of his own story told in reverse, if the theories about their connection prove accurate. The Beast of the Outskirts. As night falls over the village, the true danger reveals itself. A terrible creature emerges from the swamp to terrorize the inhabitants, killing livestock and threatening human lives. The beast is unlike the common monsters that witches typically hunt, showing intelligence and purpose that suggests something more than simple predatory behavior. Geralt's investigation into the creature's nature leads him deep into the moral complexity that defines the Witcher universe. The beast, he discovers, is not a natural monster, but the result of human action and supernatural consequence. The villagers' own prejudices and fears have played a role in creating the very threat that now haunts them. The investigation forces Geralt to navigate competing versions of the truth, each told by individuals with their own agendas and limitations. The Reverend claims the beast is divine punishment for the villagers' tolerance of witchcraft and non-human residents. Abigail suggests that the creature is the manifestation of collective guilt and hatred given supernatural form. Other villagers offer their own theories, each reflecting their personal fears and prejudices. As Geralt pieces together the truth, he's forced to confront one of the central themes of The Witcher: the idea that monsters are often created by human actions rather than born from them. The beast represents the dark consequences of unchecked hatred and fear, a reminder that the greatest threats to civilization often come from within rather than without. The resolution of the beast crisis requires Geralt to make his first major moral choice of the game, a decision that will echo throughout his journey. Does he side with the villagers who, despite their flaws, represent the established order? Does he protect Abigail, whose only crime is being different? Or does he try to find a middle path that acknowledges the complexity of the situation without absolving anyone of responsibility? This choice sets the pattern for all that follows in The Witcher. There are no clear heroes or villains, only people making decisions based on their understanding of the world and their place in it. Geralt's role is not to judge, but to act according to his own moral compass, accepting the consequences of his choices, while recognizing that others may see those same choices very differently. The resolution of the Outskirts crisis also provides Geralt with his first real clues about the Salamandra organization. The stolen mutagens have left traces in the local area, suggesting that the criminal group has been experimenting with their pilfered knowledge. These experiments have created unnatural creatures and twisted mutations that represent a perversion of the Witcher's art. Enter the city of Vizima. After resolving the crisis in the outskirts, Geralt must find a way into Vizima proper, the capital city of Temeria, where he hopes to continue his pursuit of the Salamandra organization. The city exists in a state of quarantine, sealed off from the outside world due to an outbreak of plague that has claimed hundreds of lives. Only those with proper documentation and compelling reasons are allowed to pass through the city's gates. Vizima represents the political and economic heart of Temeria, a kingdom ruled by King Foltest, whose own complicated history will prove relevant to Geralt's quest. The city is divided into distinct districts, each with its own character and challenges. The Temple Quarter houses the city's religious institutions and serves as a hub for the Order of the Flaming Rose, a militant organization dedicated to protecting humans from various threats, both real and imagined. The Trade Quarter buzzes with commercial activity, where merchants and craftsmen ply their trades while keeping careful watch on their competitors and the city guards. Here, wealth and poverty exist in uncomfortable proximity, creating tensions that simmer just beneath the surface of daily life. The wealthy district, known as Old Vizima, houses the nobility and the powerful, their grand mansions and elaborate gardens insulated from the struggles of common folk, but not immune to the political currents that shape the kingdom's future. To gain entry to the city, Geralt must navigate a complex web of bureaucracy, bribery, and political maneuvering. His reputation as a witcher opens some doors while closing others. Some see him as a valuable asset, a professional monster hunter whose skills could help address the city's problems. Others view him with suspicion, seeing witchers as relics of a barbaric past who have no place in civilized society. The process of entering Vizima teaches Geralt important lessons about the world he's forgotten. Social status matters more than moral character. Money talks louder than justice. Political connections carry more weight than professional competence. These are truths that witchers, who typically operate outside normal social structures, must learn to navigate if they want to survive in human society. Once inside the city, Geralt begins to understand the scope of the challenges facing Vizima. The plague is only one of many problems troubling the capital. Racial tensions between humans and non-humans have reached a boiling point, with violent incidents occurring regularly in the streets. Political factions maneuver for advantage, while ordinary citizens struggle to survive in an increasingly dangerous environment. The Temple Quarter Mysteries. In Vizima's Temple Quarter, Geralt finds himself at the center of multiple intersecting crises that will test his investigative skills and moral judgment. The district serves as headquarters for the Order of the Flaming Rose, a religious military organization that has recently gained significant influence in the city's affairs. The Order presents itself as a force for good, dedicated to protecting innocent people from monsters and other threats. Their knights patrol the streets in gleaming armor, their banners bearing the symbol of a flaming rose that represents their devotion to the eternal fire. They offer their services free of charge, asking nothing in return except faith and loyalty to their cause. But beneath the Order's noble facade, darker currents flow. Their definition of evil has expanded to include not just monsters, but anyone who doesn't fit their narrow vision of proper society. Non-humans face increasing persecution under the Order's protection, and even humans who practice magic or hold unorthodox beliefs find themselves under suspicion. The Order is led by Siegfried, a sincere young knight whose genuine desire to help people makes him sympathetic despite his organization's troubling tendencies. Siegfried represents the best of the Order's ideals, a man who truly believes in protecting the innocent and serving a higher purpose. His friendship with Geralt develops naturally from their shared encounters with danger and their mutual respect for each other's skills. Through Siegfried, Geralt learns about the Order's structure and beliefs. They see themselves as the last bastion of civilization against the forces of chaos and corruption. Their faith in the eternal fire provides them with certainty in an uncertain world, though that same certainty can blind them to the complexity of the situations they encounter. In the Temple Quarter, Geralt also encounters representatives of the Scoia'tael, the elven freedom fighters who have taken up arms against human oppression. These guerrilla warriors strike from the shadows, targeting human settlements and trade routes in retaliation for centuries of persecution and marginalization. The Scoia'tael present their own moral complexity. Their cause has legitimate grievances. Elves and other non-humans have indeed faced systematic discrimination and violence from human societies, but their methods often involve attacks on innocent civilians, creating new victims in their struggle for justice. They represent the dangerous path that oppressed peoples sometimes take when peaceful solutions seem impossible. The conflict between the Order of the Flaming Rose and the Scoia'tael creates a powder keg of tension in Vizima. Each side sees the other as an existential threat to their way of life. Each can point to real atrocities committed by their opponents. Each believes that their cause justifies extreme measures, and caught in the middle are ordinary people who just want to live their lives in peace. Geralt finds himself pressured to choose sides in this conflict, but his Witcher training and personal ethics resist such simple categorization. He recognizes the legitimate concerns on both sides while rejecting the extremism that characterizes each faction's approach. This position makes him valuable to some and suspicious to others, as people struggle to understand how anyone can remain neutral in such polarized times. The Salamandra investigation deepens. As Geralt delves deeper into the mysteries of Vizima, his investigation into the Salamandra organization begins to reveal the true scope of their operations. The criminal group has established a significant presence in the city, using their stolen Witcher mutagens to create enhanced soldiers and monsters for purposes that remain unclear. The investigation leads Geralt through the city's underworld, where he encounters criminals, informants, and desperate people willing to sell information for the right price. He learns that Salamandra's operations extend far beyond simple theft, encompassing drug trafficking, extortion, and more exotic crimes that leverage their stolen magical knowledge. The organization's structure reflects sophisticated planning and considerable resources. Their agents operate at multiple levels of society, from street thugs who carry out violent missions to well-placed individuals who gather intelligence and influence key decisions. The Salamandra tattoos that mark their membership serve as both identification and intimidation, letting those in the know understand who they're dealing with. Geralt's pursuit of Salamandra leads him to various locations throughout Vizima, each revealing new aspects of their operations. In the sewers beneath the city, he discovers makeshift laboratories where crude experiments with the stolen mutagens have produced horrible results. In upscale establishments, he uncovers evidence of corruption and blackmail that reaches into the highest levels of society. The investigation also brings Geralt into contact with Detective Raymond Marlouve, a city investigator who has been tracking Salamandra's activities through conventional law enforcement channels. Raymond represents the forces of legal order trying to combat organized crime through proper procedures and careful evidence gathering. Working with Raymond, Geralt begins to understand how deeply Salamandra has penetrated Vizima's social and political structures. The organization's influence extends into the guard force, the merchant guilds, and even some religious institutions. Their corruption has made them nearly untouchable through normal legal channels, requiring more direct action to bring them to justice. But as the investigation progresses, Geralt begins to suspect that not everything is as it seems. Raymond's knowledge seems unusually comprehensive for someone working within the system, and some of his suggestions lead Geralt into situations that serve Salamandra's interests more than his own. The possibility that the detective might be compromised adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate web of deception. The deeper Geralt digs, the more he realizes that Salamandra is not just a criminal organization, but part of a larger conspiracy with political implications that extend far beyond simple profit motives. The stolen Witcher mutagens are being used to create enhanced soldiers for some greater purpose, though the ultimate goal remains hidden behind layers of misdirection and compartmentalized knowledge. Alvin's growing power. Throughout his time in Vizima, Geralt continues to care for young Alvin, who remains under the protection of either Triss Merigold or Shani, depending on the choices Geralt has made. The boy's magical abilities continue to develop, becoming stronger and more unpredictable as time passes. Alvin's prophecies become more specific and disturbing, speaking of ice and death, of a white frost that will consume the world, and the need for strong leaders to guide humanity through the coming darkness. These visions trouble both Geralt and his scholarly companions, who recognize that prophecy in the Witcher world often carries the weight of inevitable fate. The boy's powers manifest in various ways beyond simple prophecy. He can teleport short distances when frightened or excited, appearing and disappearing without warning. He demonstrates an intuitive understanding of magical principles that would take years of study for ordinary people to achieve. Most disturbing of all, his emotional state seems to influence the magical energy around him, creating unpredictable effects that can be dangerous to himself and others. Geralt finds himself serving as a father figure to Alvin, offering guidance and protection while trying to help the boy understand and control his abilities. The relationship becomes deeply meaningful to the Witcher, filling a void in his life that he may not even realize exists. Through caring for Alvin, Geralt begins to understand something of what it means to be responsible for another person's future. The choices Geralt makes in guiding Alvin's development prove crucial in ways that won't become apparent until much later. The moral lessons he imparts, the values he emphasizes, and the worldview he shares all shape the boy's growing understanding of right and wrong, power and responsibility, individual needs, and collective good. These lessons, as we later discover, appear to influence the philosophies and methods that Jacques de Aldersberg would employ, suggesting a direct connection between the child's education and the Grand Master's later actions. Triss and Shani offer different approaches, to helping Alvin manage his abilities. Triss, as a trained sorceress, understands the technical aspects of magical development and can provide structured learning opportunities. Shani, as a medic and scholar, focuses on the human aspects of Alvin's situation, emphasizing emotional stability and social integration. The choice between these approaches reflects larger questions about how society should deal with individuals who possess extraordinary abilities. Should such people be trained to use their power for specific purposes, or should they be helped to live normal lives despite their unique gifts? Should exceptional individuals be expected to serve the greater good, or do they have the right to pursue their own happiness? As Alvin's powers grow stronger, so does the attention he attracts from various factions within Vizima. The Order of the Flaming Rose sees him as either a blessed child or a dangerous anomaly, depending on how his abilities manifest. The Scoia'tael wonder if his powers might aid their cause. Even ordinary citizens begin to whisper about the strange boy who can see the future and disappear at will. The swamp and its secrets. Geralt's investigation eventually leads him into the swamp outside Vizima, a dangerous wilderness where reality becomes fluid and the boundaries between the natural and supernatural blur. The swamp serves as a testing ground for Salamandra's experiments, a place where they can conduct their work away from prying eyes. In the heart of the swamp stands a mysterious tower, an ancient structure that predates human settlement in the region. The tower represents a nexus of magical energy, a place where the forces that shape reality are particularly strong and malleable. Salamandra has claimed this tower for their own purposes, using its power to enhance their experiments with the stolen Witcher mutagens. The swamp itself seems alive with malevolent intelligence, populated by creatures that should not exist, and governed by rules that defy conventional understanding. Ordinary animals have been twisted into new forms by magical contamination. Ancient spirits roam freely, their presence warping the landscape around them. Even the plant life poses threats to unwary travelers, with vines that move with predatory intent and flowers that emit mind-altering pollen. Navigation through the swamp requires more than simple geographic knowledge. The paths shift and change according to mysterious patterns, leading travelers in circles or depositing them in locations far from their intended destinations. Time itself seems distorted within the swamp's boundaries, with hours passing like minutes or minutes, stretching into seeming eternities. Geralt's journey through this treacherous landscape tests all of his Witcher skills. His enhanced senses help him detect hidden dangers, while his knowledge of alchemy allows him to brew potions that protect against the swamp's various threats. His experience with monsters serves him well in confronting the unnatural creatures that lurk in the murky waters and twisted trees. But the swamp's greatest danger lies not in its monsters or environmental hazards, but in the way it reveals hidden truths about the people who venture into its depths. The magical energies that permeate the area seem to strip away pretenses and facades, forcing individuals to confront aspects of themselves they would prefer to keep hidden. In the swamp, Geralt begins to piece together the true scope of Salamandra's operations. The organization has been using the tower as a base for experiments that go far beyond simple mutation enhancement. They've been trying to create entirely new forms of life, artificial beings that combine human intelligence with supernatural power and complete loyalty to their creators. These experiments have produced various prototypes, from enhanced human soldiers to monstrous hybrids that serve as guards and weapons. None of these creations are entirely successful, but each iteration brings Salamandra closer to their ultimate goal of creating perfect servants who can carry out their master's will without question or hesitation. Betrayal and revelation. As Geralt's investigation reaches its climax, he discovers that Detective Raymond Marlouve, his supposed ally in the fight against Salamandra, has been deceiving him from the beginning. Raymond is not actually the city detective at all, but rather Azar Yarved, the mysterious mage who led the attack on Kaer Morhen, disguised through powerful illusion magic. The revelation of this betrayal hits Geralt with particular force, because it represents a fundamental violation of trust. In a world where witches must often work alone, finding reliable allies is crucial for survival. The discovery that someone he trusted has been manipulating him throughout his investigation forces Geralt to question not just Raymond's motives, but his own judgment in trusting the supposed detective. Azar Javed reveals himself as a Zerrikanian sorcerer, a practitioner of fire magic who was expelled from the magical academy of Ban Ard for his excessive engagement in forbidden necromantic practices. His expulsion drove him into the criminal underworld, where his magical abilities and lack of ethical constraints made him valuable to organizations like Salamandra. The confrontation with Azar Javed takes place in the mysterious tower where the sorcerer has been conducting his most important experiments. Surrounded by the fruits of his labor, mutated creatures, alchemical equipment, and arcane machinery, Javed explains his vision for the future. He sees himself as a pioneer of human enhancement, using the stolen Witcher secrets to create a new breed of humanity that will be stronger, faster, and more resilient than ordinary people. But Javed's vision is ultimately one of control and domination. His enhanced humans are not meant to be free individuals pursuing their own goals, but rather perfect soldiers who will serve their creators without question. He views ordinary humanity as weak and flawed, in need of improvement through forced mutation and magical enhancement. The battle with Azar Javed tests all of Geralt's combat skills and magical knowledge. The sorcerer wields fire magic with devastating effect, filling the tower with flames and smoke that threaten to consume everything within. His mastery of illusion magic makes it difficult for Geralt to determine which attacks are real and which are mere phantoms designed to misdirect and confuse. During the fight, Geralt must also contend with Yaved's enhanced creations, artificial beings that combine human intelligence with superhuman strength and speed. These creatures represent the dark potential of the stolen Witcher knowledge, showing how the mutations that create heroes can just as easily produce monsters when applied without wisdom or restraint. The Professor's last stand. The confrontation with Azar Javed leads to an even more personal encounter with the Professor, the sophisticated assassin who killed Leo at Kaer Morhen. The Professor represents a different kind of evil than Javed's grandiose schemes. He is a killer who takes pride in his craft and views murder as an art form worthy of intellectual appreciation. The Professor's weapon of choice is a crossbow, which he wields with deadly precision from both long range and close quarters. His fighting style reflects his personality, calculated, efficient, and utterly without mercy. He sees witches as obsolete relics of the past, sentimental fools whose adherence to outdated codes makes them vulnerable to more pragmatic opponents. The battle between Geralt and the Professor takes on symbolic dimensions beyond mere physical combat. It represents a clash between different philosophies of power and responsibility. Geralt, even without his memories, embodies the Witcher ideal of using extraordinary abilities to protect others. The Professor represents the cynical view that power exists to be used for personal advantage, regardless of the cost to others. Their fight leads them through dangerous terrain, ultimately ending in a Kaer Morhen lair, where the Professor meets his end, not at Geralt's hands, but as prey to the very monsters he helped create through his association with Salamandra. The Kaer Morhen queen that kills the Professor serves as a reminder that those who traffic in unnatural power often fall victim to forces they cannot control. The Professor's death provides a measure of justice for Leo's murder, but it also raises questions about the nature of vengeance and closure. Geralt's pursuit of the Professor was driven by a need for justice that transcended his missing memories, suggesting that some aspects of moral character run deeper than conscious recollection. The truth about Princess Ada. In the aftermath of his confrontations with Salamandra's leadership, Geralt makes a shocking discovery about the extent of the organization's influence. Princess Ada, daughter of King Foltest, and a figure of significant political importance, has been secretly supporting Salamandra's operations. This revelation transforms Geralt's understanding of the conspiracy he's been fighting. Salamandra is not merely a criminal organization operating on the margins of society, but a group with connections to the highest levels of political power. Their operations have been protected and facilitated by someone with access to royal resources and information. Princess Ada's involvement with Salamandra stems from her own complex motivations and circumstances. As a member of the royal family, she has access to power and privilege that most people can only dream of, but she also faces restrictions and expectations that limit her personal freedom. Her association with Salamandra may represent an attempt to gain real power and influence beyond the ceremonial role typically assigned to royal women. The discovery of Ada's betrayal forces Geralt to confront the reality that his enemies are not simply evil individuals pursuing selfish goals, but people whose motivations are complex and whose actions stem from understandable, if misguided, desires for power and change. This complexity makes the moral landscape even more challenging to navigate. Ada's coup attempt, revealed in the aftermath of Geralt's victory over the Professor, demonstrates the political instability that Salamandra's activities have helped create. By weakening Foltest's authority and creating chaos in Vizima, the organization has set the stage for a power struggle that could plunge the kingdom into civil war. The Order's hidden agenda. As the immediate threat of Salamandra appears to be neutralized, Geralt begins to uncover evidence that the conspiracy extends even further than he previously realized. The Order of the Flaming Rose, which has presented itself as a force for good and stability, harbors its own secrets and agenda that may be even more dangerous than Salamandra's schemes. The Order's true leader is revealed to be Jacques de Aldersberg, a charismatic figure whose vision for humanity's future involves radical transformation through forced evolution. Unlike Azar Javd's crude experiments with stolen mutagens, Jacques' plan is far more sophisticated and comprehensive, involving the creation of an entirely new form of human being. Jacques de Aldersberg presents himself as a visionary who can see the challenges that humanity will face in the future. He speaks of a coming catastrophe, a white frost that will consume the world and destroy civilization unless humanity adapts to survive. His solution involves using the stolen Witcher knowledge to create enhanced humans who can withstand the coming apocalypse and rebuild society according to his vision. The Grand Master's plan involves the creation of beings he calls Greater Brothers, artificial soldiers who possess all the physical capabilities of witches, but none of their emotional complexity or moral autonomy. These creatures would serve as the shepherds of a new world order, guiding ordinary humans through the coming catastrophe and ensuring that civilization survives in the form that Jacques envisions. The revelation that the Order of the Flaming Rose has been working with Salamandra all along transforms Geralt's understanding of the conflict in Vizima. The persecution of non-humans, the religious extremism, the apparent protection of innocent people, all of these activities have been designed to create the conditions necessary for Jacques' ultimate plan to succeed. The Order's definition of evil that needs to be eliminated includes not just monsters and criminals, but anyone who might oppose their vision of the future. Non-humans are targeted because their different biological makeup might interfere with the planned enhancement of humanity. Mages and other magic users are viewed with suspicion because their independent power might challenge the Order's authority. The Grand Master's vision. Jacques de Aldersberg emerges as the true architect of the conspiracy that has plagued Vizima and the surrounding regions. His vision extends far beyond the immediate political situation in Temeria, encompassing a fundamental transformation of human society that would eliminate what he sees as weakness and inefficiency in favor of strength and order. The Grand Master possesses innate magical abilities as a source. Though unlike professionally trained mages, his power comes from raw talent and force of will rather than formal education. This self-taught approach to magic gives his abilities an unpredictable quality that makes him dangerous in ways that conventional sorcerers are not. His fire-based magic reflects his passionate temperament and his desire to burn away the old world to make room for the new. Jacques' charisma and genuine conviction make him a compelling figure, even as his methods reveal him to be a dangerous fanatic. He truly believes that his vision represents humanity's only hope for survival in the face of coming catastrophe. His prophecies of the White Frost and the end of civilization are not mere propaganda, but genuine beliefs that drive his every action. The Grand Master's past remains largely mysterious, but hints suggest that he was once a vagrant driven by hatred of non-humans before finding purpose in the Order of the White Rose. His transformation of that organization into the Order of the Flaming Rose reflects his ability to take existing institutions and reshape them according to his vision. Under Jacques' leadership, the Order has become something far more ambitious than a simple religious military organization. It represents a complete ideology that addresses every aspect of human existence, from individual behavior to social organization to humanity's ultimate destiny. This comprehensive worldview gives the Order's members a sense of purpose and direction that makes them formidable opponents. The Enhanced Edition's additional content reveals more about Jacques' methods and motivations. His experiments with creating greater brothers represent only one aspect of a larger program designed to reshape humanity according to his specifications. These artificial beings are intended to serve as both protectors and guides for ordinary humans, ensuring that society develops along the lines that Jacques considers optimal. The Ice Plains confrontation. The final confrontation between Geralt and Jacques de Aldersberg takes place not in the physical world, but in a realm of the Grand Master's creation known as the Ice Plains. This supernatural battlefield represents Jacques' vision of the future that awaits humanity if his plans are not implemented. A frozen wasteland where civilization has collapsed and only the strongest survive. The Ice Plains exist as a manifestation of Jacques' source powers, a psychic landscape where thoughts and beliefs take physical form. The frozen environment reflects the Grand Master's prophecies about the white frost that will consume the world, while the desolate terrain represents his view of what will happen to humanity without proper leadership and guidance. In this otherworldly arena, Jacques attempts to convince Geralt to join his cause by showing him visions of the future he seeks to prevent. The Grand Master's persuasive abilities are enhanced by the psychic nature of their surroundings, allowing him to project his beliefs and fears directly into Geralt's consciousness. The debate between Geralt and Jacques represents a fundamental clash of philosophies about power, responsibility, and the nature of heroism. Jacques argues that extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures, that the coming catastrophe justifies any action taken to ensure humanity's survival. He presents himself as someone willing to bear the burden of making difficult decisions that others are too weak or sentimental to make. Geralt, even without his complete memories, represents a different approach to using extraordinary power. The Witcher ideal emphasizes individual responsibility and moral choice, rejecting the idea that any cause, no matter how noble, justifies abandoning basic principles of right and wrong. Geralt's resistance to Jacques' arguments comes not from detailed philosophical reasoning, but from a deep-seated understanding of what it means to be a protector rather than a ruler. The physical battle that follows their philosophical debate tests both combatants to their limits. Jacques' fire magic and source powers make him a formidable opponent, capable of reshaping the battlefield itself to his advantage. His artificial warriors, the Greater Brothers, serve as extensions of his will, attacking with perfect coordination and unwavering loyalty. Geralt must rely on his Witcher training and instincts to survive the encounter. His alchemical knowledge allows him to brew potions that enhance his abilities and protect against Jacques' magical attacks. His mastery of sword combat serves him well against the Greater Brothers, while his signs provide him with magical options for dealing with the Grand Master's supernatural powers. The tragic truth of Alvin. During the final confrontation, the true nature of Jacques de Aldersberg's identity becomes apparent through subtle hints and symbolic connections that tie together the entire narrative of The Witcher. The evidence strongly suggests that the boy Alvin, whom Geralt has protected and guided throughout his journey, and the Grand Master, Jacques de Aldersberg, are the same person, separated by a temporal paradox that would explain many of the story's mysteries. The evidence for this connection has been building throughout the game, though its significance only becomes clear in retrospect. The Dimeritium amulet that Geralt gave to Alvin to help control his powers is found on Jacques' body, showing years of wear that could only come from decades of use. The moral lessons that Geralt taught the boy are reflected in Jacques' speeches and philosophy, though transformed by time and circumstance into something darker. Based on what we observe of Alvin's abilities, his power to teleport through time and space, a manifestation of his source powers and possible elder blood heritage, would have allowed him to escape the dangers of the present by fleeing to the past. Landing in an earlier era, the boy could have grown up with the knowledge of future events and the moral framework that Geralt had tried to instill in him, but without the Witcher's continued guidance to help him navigate the complexities of wielding such knowledge. This interpretation suggests a profound tragedy, that Alvin's genuine desire to help people and prevent suffering became corrupted into Jacques' authoritarian vision. The boy who wanted to become a Witcher knight, to protect the innocent, could have grown into a man who saw protection as requiring absolute control. The child who feared the coming white frost might have become an adult who believed that only radical transformation could save humanity from that fate. If this interpretation is correct, then this temporal loop creates a profound sense of inevitability and loss. Geralt's efforts to guide Alvin and help him control his powers were doomed from the beginning, not because they were wrong, but because they were incomplete. The Witcher gave the boy moral principles, but could not provide the emotional support and continued guidance needed to help him apply those principles wisely in the face of overwhelming knowledge and power. The realization that Jacques de Aldersberg could have once been the innocent child Alvin adds layers of tragedy to the final battle. Under this reading, Geralt is not simply fighting a dangerous fanatic, but confronting the ultimate failure of his own paternal instincts and teaching abilities. The boy he tried to protect and guide has become the very kind of threat that witchers are trained to eliminate. This possible connection also explains Jacques' seemingly personal knowledge of Geralt's character and motivations. The Grandmaster's ability to anticipate the Witcher's actions and arguments could stem not from strategic brilliance, but from intimate familiarity with the man who once served as his protector and moral teacher. the weight of choice. The philosophical conflict between Geralt and Jacques extends beyond their personal relationship to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of heroism and the responsibility that comes with extraordinary power. Jacques' transformation from Alvin represents one possible response to the burden of knowledge and ability, while Geralt's approach represents another. Jacques chose to use his foreknowledge of catastrophe and his supernatural abilities to reshape society according to his vision, believing that only radical intervention could save humanity from itself. His methods involve deception, manipulation, and the creation of artificial beings designed to serve his will without question. He sees these measures as necessary sacrifices for the greater good, justifying any immediate harm by pointing to the larger catastrophe he seeks to prevent. Geralt's approach, by contrast, emphasizes individual choice and personal responsibility. Even without his memories, the Witcher instinctively rejects the idea that good ends justify evil means. His training and moral instincts tell him that protection must be offered freely and accepted willingly, not imposed through force or deception. The debate between these two approaches reflects one of the central themes of the Witcher series: the question of whether those with extraordinary abilities have the right or responsibility to make decisions for those without such gifts. Jacques believes that his knowledge of the future and his supernatural powers give him both the right and the duty to guide humanity's development. Geralt maintains that such power must be used in service to others' freely chosen goals, rather than imposed according to the powerful individual's vision. This philosophical conflict is made more poignant by the personal connection between the two characters. Geralt is essentially arguing against the logical conclusion of his own teachings, confronting the way that his moral lessons have been interpreted and applied by someone who learned them in circumstances very different from their original context. The choice that Geralt faces in the final battle is not simply tactical, but fundamentally moral. He must decide whether to kill someone who was once under his protection, someone whose current path stems at least partly from Geralt's own influence. The Witcher must choose between his responsibility to protect society from dangerous individuals and his personal sense of obligation to someone he once tried to help. The King of the Wild Hunt. During the climactic battle with Jacques de Aldersberg, a mysterious figure known as the King of the Wild Hunt appears to claim the Grand Master's soul. This supernatural entity represents forces that operate beyond the normal boundaries of mortal politics and ambition, introducing an element of cosmic significance to what might otherwise be merely a personal conflict. The Wild Hunt in the Witcher universe represents a force of otherworldly power that occasionally intrudes into mortal affairs for purposes that are not always clear to those they encounter. The king's interest in Jacques' soul suggests that the Grand Master's activities have attracted attention from supernatural powers that exist beyond the normal scope of human understanding. Geralt is given a choice regarding the king's demand for Jacques' soul. He can allow the supernatural entity to claim his defeated opponent, or he can deny the request and take full responsibility for the Grand Master's fate himself. This choice reflects the broader theme of personal responsibility that runs throughout The Witcher, forcing Geralt to decide how much authority he is willing to cede to forces beyond his control. If Geralt allows the King of the Wild Hunt to take Jacques' soul, the supernatural entity reveals that he has known this soul under another name, which could be interpreted as confirming the connection between Jacques and Alvin without explicitly stating it. This revelation adds another layer of tragedy to the story, suggesting that Alvin's fate was somehow predetermined, or at least observed by forces that exist outside normal time and causality. If Geralt denies the king's request, he takes full responsibility for Jacques' death, asserting his own moral agency against supernatural authority. This choice reflects the Witcher's fundamental belief in personal responsibility and individual choice, even when confronted with powers that operate beyond human understanding. The King of the Wild Hunt's appearance also foreshadows events that will become central to later games in the series, establishing connections that will prove significant in Geralt's ongoing story. The supernatural entity's interest in both Jacques and Geralt suggests that the Witcher's own fate is somehow intertwined with forces that operate beyond the immediate political and personal conflicts of the first game. Resolution and consequences. The defeat of Jacques de Aldersberg brings the immediate crisis in Temeria to an end, but the resolution of the conflict raises as many questions as it answers. The Grand Master's death eliminates the threat posed by his vision of enforced human evolution, but it also removes someone who genuinely believed he was working to save humanity from future catastrophe. King Foltest's victory over the Order of the Flaming Rose restores political stability to Temeria, but it also removes an organization that, despite its extremist methods, did provide valuable services to ordinary people. The Order's knights protected communities from monsters and criminals, and their elimination leaves a security vacuum that the royal government may struggle to fill. The revelation of Princess Ada's involvement in the conspiracy forces King Foltest to confront uncomfortable truths about his own family and the political situation in his kingdom. The princess's attempted coup demonstrates that dissatisfaction with the current order extends even into the royal family itself, suggesting that the problems Jacques sought to address through radical transformation are real even if his solutions were unacceptable. The fate of the Salamandra organization illustrates the difficulty of completely eliminating criminal enterprises that have become deeply embedded in society's structures. While the leadership has been eliminated and their immediate plans thwarted, many of their agents and resources remain in place, ready to be reorganized under new leadership or absorbed into other criminal enterprises. Geralt's recovery of the stolen Witcher secrets ensures that this knowledge will not continue to be misused for purposes that contradict the principles for which it was originally developed. However, the fact that such secrets could be stolen in the first place highlights the vulnerability of organizations like the School of the Wolf, whose numbers and resources have declined to the point where they can barely protect their own strongholds. The personal cost of Geralt's victory includes what appears to be the loss of any chance to save Alvin from the fate that may have transformed him into Jacques de Aldersberg. The Witcher's inability to prevent this transformation, despite his best efforts to guide and protect the boy, represents a profound failure of his protective instincts and teaching abilities, though this assumes the widely held interpretation of their connection is accurate. The broader implications. The events of The Witcher extend beyond the immediate story of Geralt's pursuit of the Salamandra organization to illuminate broader themes about power, responsibility, and the nature of heroism in a morally complex world. The game's narrative structure, which allows players to make choices that significantly affect the story's development, reinforces these themes by forcing direct engagement with the moral dilemmas that the characters face. The conflict between the Order of the Flaming Rose and the Scoia'tael illustrates how legitimate grievances can be manipulated to serve the interests of those who seek power for its own sake. Both organizations have valid concerns about threats to their people and ways of life, but both have also been influenced by leaders whose vision extends beyond addressing immediate problems to reshaping society according to their personal beliefs. The revelation that Jacques de Aldersberg was once Alvin demonstrates how good intentions and moral teachings can be corrupted when combined with extraordinary power and knowledge without the emotional maturity and continued guidance necessary to apply them wisely. This tragedy serves as a warning about the dangers of assuming that teaching someone moral principles is sufficient to ensure they will apply those principles correctly in all circumstances. The game's treatment of institutions, like the Order of the Flaming Rose and the Temerian government, shows how organizations that are created to serve legitimate purposes can be corrupted when they gain too much power, or when their leadership becomes divorced from the people they are supposed to protect. The Order's transformation from a protective force into an instrument of oppression illustrates this process, while King Foltest struggles to maintain control over his own kingdom, demonstrate the challenges facing traditional authorities. The moral complexity of the Witcher's world, where heroes and villains are not clearly defined and where good intentions can lead to terrible consequences, reflects a mature understanding of how ethical decisions must be made in real-world situations where perfect information and clear moral guidance are rarely available. Geralt's approach of making the best decisions he can with the information available to him, while accepting responsibility for the consequences of those decisions, provides a model for ethical behavior in complex situations. The Enhanced Edition editions. The Enhanced Edition of The Witcher, released in 2008, added significant content that deepened the game's exploration of moral complexity and political intrigue. The premium modules, The Price of Neutrality, and Side Effects explored additional themes that reinforced the main game's moral framework. In this additional adventure, Geralt encounters a situation where his attempts to avoid taking sides in a political conflict are interpreted as support for whichever faction is currently losing. The module demonstrates how neutrality itself can become a political position, and how those who refuse to choose sides may find themselves opposed by all parties to a conflict. The Side Effects Premium module deals with the consequences of magical experimentation and the ethics of using supernatural power to solve practical problems. This adventure reinforces the game's themes about the responsibility that comes with extraordinary abilities and the dangers of assuming that magical solutions are always preferable to conventional approaches. These additional modules strengthen the game's central message about the complexity of moral decision-making in a world where clear answers are rare and where every choice carries the potential for unintended consequences. They also provide additional opportunities for players to explore different approaches to the ethical dilemmas that define Geralt's world. The Enhanced Edition also included technical improvements that made the game more accessible to players who might have been deterred by the original release's sometimes clunky interface and challenging combat system. These improvements helped ensure that more players could experience the game's sophisticated narrative and meaningful choice system. Legacy and impact. The Witcher established many of the themes and approaches that would define the entire trilogy of games based on Sapkowski's work. Its emphasis on moral complexity, meaningful choice, and the exploration of how good intentions can lead to terrible consequences would be refined and expanded in subsequent games. But the foundation was laid in this first interactive adaptation of the Witcher universe. The game's treatment of Geralt's amnesia as a narrative device allowed new players to learn about the world alongside the protagonist, while also providing opportunities to explore how identity and moral character might exist independently of specific memories and experiences. This approach proved influential in how later games would handle exposition and character development. The relationship between Geralt and Alvin, and its tragic resolution in the revelation of Jacques de Aldersberg's true identity, demonstrated how video game narratives could use interactive elements to create emotional impact that went beyond what could be achieved through passive media. Players who had spent hours caring for and guiding Alvin experienced the revelation of his fate as a personal failure rather than merely an abstract plot development. The game's political themes, including the conflict between the Order of the Flaming Rose and the Scoia'tael Tail, established the series' willingness to engage with complex social issues without offering simple solutions. This approach would continue throughout the trilogy, with each game exploring different aspects of prejudice, political corruption, and the challenge of maintaining moral principles in difficult circumstances. The success of The Witcher also demonstrated that there was a market for mature, complex role-playing games that treated their audiences as capable of engaging with sophisticated moral and political themes. This success helped pave the way for other developers to create similarly ambitious projects that pushed the boundaries of what video game narratives could accomplish. The price of memory. One of The Witcher's most subtle but important themes concerns the relationship between memory and identity. Geralt's amnesia serves not just as a convenient plot device, but as a way of exploring how much of what we consider to be our true self depends on specific experiences, and how much reflects deeper aspects of character that transcend particular memories. Throughout the game, Geralt demonstrates that his core moral instincts and professional competencies remain intact despite his missing memories. His protective instincts toward Alvin, his disgust with the Salamandra organization's methods, and his resistance to Jacques de Aldersberg's authoritarian vision all emerge from aspects of his character that exist independently of his conscious recollection of past events. At the same time, Geralt's amnesia makes him vulnerable to manipulation by those who claim to know who he was or what he believed. Characters like Triss Merigold, who have genuine knowledge of his past, must balance their desire to help him recover his identity with respect for the person he is becoming as he creates new experiences and relationships. The game suggests that identity is both continuous and evolving, rooted in fundamental aspects of character, but also shaped by ongoing experiences and choices. Geralt's journey represents not just the recovery of lost memories, but the creation of a new version of himself that incorporates both his forgotten past and his present circumstances. This theme gains additional complexity through what appears to be Alvin's transformation into Jacques de Aldersberg. The boy's knowledge of future events and his separation from Geralt's continuing guidance could have created circumstances where his fundamental character was overwhelmed by the weight of knowledge and power that he was not emotionally equipped to handle. Choices and consequences. The Witcher's choice system was revolutionary for its time in the way it delayed the consequences of player decisions, often making the results of moral choices apparent only hours of gameplay later. This approach prevented the save and reload mentality that characterized many other role-playing games, forcing players to live with their decisions and see how they played out over time. The game's moral choices rarely offered clear right and wrong options, instead presenting dilemmas where any decision would have both positive and negative consequences. The choice of whether to support the Order of the Flaming Rose or the Scoia'tael Tail, for example, involved weighing legitimate concerns about security and justice against troubling tendencies toward extremism and violence on both sides. Even seemingly minor choices could have significant long-term consequences. The way Geralt treated various NPCs throughout his journey affected not only his immediate relationships, but also the broader political situation in Vizima. Characters who were helped or harmed by the Witcher's actions would remember those interactions and respond accordingly when they gained positions of influence or power. The choices Geralt made in guiding Alvin's development proved particularly significant, as they directly influenced the philosophy and methods that Jacques de Aldersberg would later employ. This created a unique form of dramatic irony, where players who made what seemed like wise and compassionate choices in educating the boy would later see those same lessons twisted into justifications for authoritarianism and violence. The game's approach to moral choice reflected a sophisticated understanding of how ethical decisions must be made in real-world situations where perfect information is not available and where good intentions do not guarantee positive outcomes. This approach would influence how moral choice systems were designed in many subsequent role-playing games. The dark fantasy setting. The Witcher's dark fantasy setting provided the perfect backdrop for its exploration of moral complexity and political intrigue. The world's combination of medieval technology with supernatural elements created an environment where extraordinary individuals like Geralt could have significant impact on historical events while still being constrained by very human limitations and concerns. The game's monsters serve not just as combat encounters, but as metaphors for the various forms of evil that threaten civilized society. Some monsters were simply predators following their nature, representing the kind of straightforward threats that societies must defend against through organized effort and professional expertise. Others were the products of human actions, created by hatred, fear, or magical experimentation gone wrong. The presence of multiple sentient species, humans, elves, dwarves, and others, allowed the game to explore themes of prejudice and discrimination without directly referencing real-world ethnic or racial conflicts. The tensions between humans and non-humans reflected the dynamics of persecution and resistance that have characterized many historical situations, while the fantasy setting provided enough distance to examine these issues without becoming mired in contemporary political debates. The game's magic system reinforced its themes about power and responsibility by showing how supernatural abilities could be used for both beneficial and harmful purposes. Magic users like Triss Merigold and Azar Javed demonstrated the full spectrum of how extraordinary power might be employed, from healing and protection to manipulation and destruction. The political structure of the game's world, with its medieval-style kingdoms and feudal relationships, provided a familiar framework for exploring how power operates at different levels of society. The tensions between royal authority, religious institutions, military organizations, and criminal enterprises reflected the complex interplay of forces that shape any political system. Conclusion: the White Wolf's first hunt. As we reach the end of our deep dive into The Witcher's complete story, we find ourselves contemplating a narrative that achieves something remarkable in the world of interactive entertainment. This is not simply a tale of good versus evil, but a complex meditation on the nature of heroism, the weight of responsibility, and the tragic consequences that can emerge from the best of intentions. Geralt's journey from the amnesiac Witcher awakening in Kaer Morhen to the seasoned professional who confronts Jacques de Aldersberg in the Ice Plains represents more than just character development. It embodies the universal human struggle to understand who we are, what we believe, and how we should act when faced with impossible choices. What appears to be the revelation that Alvin and Jacques de Aldersberg are the same person creates one of gaming's most profound tragedies. Here is a story where the hero's greatest failure comes not from weakness or moral compromise, but from the inadequacy of good intentions in the face of cosmic forces and temporal paradoxes beyond any individual's control. If this interpretation is correct, then Geralt's efforts to guide and protect the boy were doomed not because they were wrong, but because they were incomplete. The game's exploration of political and social themes through the conflict between the Order of the Flaming Rose and the Scoia'tael demonstrates how even the most bitter enemies can share common ground in their fundamental concerns, while remaining irreconcilably divided by their proposed solutions. Neither faction is entirely wrong in their assessment of the problems facing their society, but both become dangerous when they prioritize their ideological purity over the welfare of innocent people. The Salamandra organization serves as a reminder that evil often presents itself not as mustache-twirling villainy, but as rational response to genuine problems. Azar Javed's experiments with human enhancement, Jacques' vision of guided evolution, and even Princess Ada's attempted coup all stem from legitimate concerns about the challenges facing their world. The tragedy lies not in their recognition of these problems, but in their willingness to sacrifice moral principles in pursuit of solutions. Perhaps most importantly, The Witcher establishes Geralt of Rivia as a truly unique protagonist in the landscape of interactive entertainment. He is neither a blank slate for player projection, nor a fully predetermined character following a scripted path. Instead, he represents something more complex, a person whose fundamental nature provides moral grounding while still allowing for meaningful choice and growth. The Witcher's code, even when imperfectly remembered, serves as an ethical framework that values individual dignity, personal responsibility, and the protection of the innocent above abstract political goals or ideological consistency. This approach doesn't provide easy answers to complex problems, but it offers a way of thinking about difficult decisions that honors both practical necessity and moral principle. The Enhanced Edition's additional content reinforces these themes while expanding our understanding of the world's complexity. The price of neutrality demonstrates how even the choice to remain neutral becomes a political position, while Side Effects explores the ethical implications of using supernatural power to solve mundane problems. These modules show how the game's central themes can be explored from different angles without losing their essential character. Looking back at The Witcher from the perspective of gaming history, we can see how it established many of the elements that would define not just its own sequels, but an entire generation of role-playing games that aspire to greater narrative sophistication and moral complexity. Its influence extends beyond the mechanical innovations of its choice system to encompass a fundamental shift in how video games could approach mature themes and complex characters. The game's treatment of memory and identity through Geralt's amnesia provided a template for how developers could create narratives that honored existing lore while still being accessible to newcomers. The relationship between past and present, between who we were and who we choose to become, remains relevant not just to Geralt's personal story, but to anyone who has ever struggled with questions of personal growth and moral development. The political themes explored through the various factions in Vizima continue to resonate in our contemporary world, where similar tensions between security and freedom, tradition and progress, individual rights and collective needs play out in contexts that would be familiar to anyone who has navigated the game's moral landscape. Most significantly, The Witcher proved that video game audiences were ready for narratives that treated them as mature individuals capable of engaging with complex themes and ambiguous situations. The game's commercial and critical success demonstrated that there was a market for interactive entertainment that aspired to the same level of sophistication that readers expected from literary fiction and viewers demanded from serious cinema. The tragic story of what may be Alvin's transformation into Jacques de Aldersberg serves as the emotional and thematic heart of the entire experience. It represents the game's understanding that heroism is not about achieving perfect outcomes, but about making the best choices possible with the information available while accepting responsibility for the consequences. Geralt's apparent inability to save the boy from his fate does not diminish his heroism, but rather illustrates the limitations that even the most capable individuals face when confronting forces beyond their control. In the end, The Witcher's complete story offers us something precious, a narrative that respects our intelligence while engaging our emotions, that challenges our assumptions while providing meaningful agency, and that demonstrates how interactive entertainment can explore the deepest questions of human existence without sacrificing the fundamental pleasures of adventure and discovery that make gaming such a compelling medium. The White Wolf's first digital hunt established him as one of gaming's most complex and compelling protagonists, while creating a template for morally sophisticated interactive narratives that continues to influence developers and delight players more than 15 years after its initial release. In a medium often criticized for its simplistic approach to moral questions, The Witcher stands as proof that video games can engage with the full complexity of human experience, while still delivering the excitement and engagement that make them uniquely powerful forms of entertainment. And so concludes our deep dive into The Witcher's complete story. We've discovered a narrative that transforms a simple tale of revenge into a complex meditation on power, responsibility, and the tragic consequences of good intentions. The legacy of Geralt's first adventure continues to influence how we think about heroism, choice, and the nature of interactive storytelling. Next time on Lore to Action, we'll explore another thrilling tale from gaming's rich tapestry of adventures. Until then, keep adventuring through those incredible worlds, fellow explorers, and remember that in the land of the Witcher, evil is evil. But sometimes, the path to righteousness is paved with impossible choices and unintended consequences. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of gaming's most sophisticated and emotionally resonant narratives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into The Witcher story, please like this video and subscribe to Lore to Action for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's greatest adventures. Your support helps us continue creating these detailed examinations of the stories that define our favorite medium.